Welcome to The Nation. I'm Sean Plunkett. Well, the oil, gas and mining sector is the most productive part of our economy. That's according to a new government report released just this week. Workers in those industries earn an average of $105,000 a year. That's more than twice the New Zealand average. They also generate around $333 for every hour they work. The average around $48. But while National is pushing the promise of more oil and mineral wealth to come, critics are warning it could come at a price, being the environment. And this week, Greenpeace released a video campaign against deep-sea oil exploration, with a number of high-profile celebrities like Hollywood actor Sam Neal taking part. Well, I'm joined now by Energy and Resources Minister Simon Bridges in Tauranga. Minister, good morning to you.
Good morning, Sean.
You have said that this industry could be a game changer, but it's not a silver bullet. What do you mean?
Well, I suppose I mean just that. It could be very significant in the sense that if you take oil and gas, we are under-explored. We have one basin, Taranaki, that does very well for us in the billions of dollars per annum. We have 17 other basins. If any one of those was to have anything like what Taranaki has, I think that could properly be described as a game changer. But of course, this is not the only thing an economy needs. It's not an either or when you talk about ICT, high-tech manufacturing, and these other very important areas. We'd like to see them all succeed, but I suppose when I talk, I'm talking as Energy and Resources Minister, and I see very substantial potential coming from that.
What are the barriers then, as the government sees it, to that potential being realised?
Well, you'll be talking, I think, to industry players, and I think you'll hear from them. Still there's a regulatory burden, and I don't actually apologise for that, because I think the quid pro quo of really lifting exploration and development is making sure we have the highest standards possible, world best practice. I mean, there's other things. We are a remote place, so we are a small country, so we're not going to have a big domestic market for oil, for gas, for gold, for coal, although there is a market, so we're always going to be having to send it to other parts of the world. But I think all in all, it's a very good news story, and it's one of untapped potential that we'd be wrong to leave there. We should be exploring it.
All right, you seem pretty keen to do so. You also seem quite keen to change the law to encourage people, particularly larger overseas companies, to come here and search, for example, for petroleum offshore.
And I don't apologise for that. I think the fact of the matter is, you're right, this is a government that does want to see sensible exploration and development. But what is also true, with the Crown Minerals Bill I turned into law, the Parliament turned into law earlier this year, we significantly lifted the environmental and the health and safety standards. I think when you talk to the industry players, you'll hear also in health and safety, regulatory environment there really lifted. And then also in the EEZ's situation, we have again gone from not quite a Wild West, but from a position of very low regulation to one of a very high regulatory environment. So, I think all in all, as I say, a quid pro quo there, more development, but to world highest standards is the right balance.
Minister, if you are so confident that the regulatory framework that exploration is being carried out under is so good, why does the government feel it necessary to cut the public out of having a say through Amy Adams' amendments to the Marine Resource Act, where applications to explore under the Environmental Protection Act will be non-notifiable?
Well, firstly, as I say, if you look at that piece of law, it's going from very low regulation to actually high regulatory involvement. But in terms of the public process and whether we have public involved, actually, it's exploratory drilling we're talking about for a very small number of weeks. We thought on balance it wasn't right to have a many month-long process at a couple of $1 million cost, when actually all you're trying to do is, through best science and best evidence, establish what the environmental impact is.
So the removal of public input to that process
meet the test
was directly in the interest of the industry to get them to come here and look for oil?
I've got no doubt that industry would prefer non-notified to notified. But the point of the matter is, actually, it doesn't really matter when you're looking at a regulatory process and the best science and evidence, what Bunny McDiarmid thinks. It matters what the science and the evidence is in that situation. And it's a rigorous process. I mean, you go and talk to the companies, you will hear them tell you, actually, they are put through the ringer in terms of what I put on them through the Crown Minerals legislation, in terms of what Amy Adams puts on them through the EEZ Law and Marine Bill. It's a very rigorous, scrutinised process, and some of them won't get there because they won't have high enough standards, because the environmental protections won't be good enough.
Okay. The reason you're looking for oil is in the hope that it is found. Many New Zealanders also, or New Zealanders in general, have some scepticism about how much of the money generated by that oil will stay in New Zealand, and whether or not there's something to go wrong with an offshore oil field if we have the technical capability to clean it up.
Well, some scepticism is healthy, right? I don't think we actually want a situation of blind faith. We should always challenge and ask questions. We live in a free society, and that's very right. But absolutely, and I think
Minister,
the report we've just put out shows the benefits are in New Zealand.
Minister, we live in a society where you are now not free to protest in certain circumstances offshore oil exploration or drilling, and you're not free to be notified. Well, I'm talking about the laws you've passed.
The fact of the matter is, despite what Bunny McDiarmid may say, you can protest literally anywhere, anytime. You can go out on sea and protest. What you can't do, and what I believe, and I think most New Zealanders actually polling showed, a Herald Digipoll showed, think you shouldn't be able to do, is unsafe action around vessels who are going about their lawful business, where you're putting them and yourself at risk of death. So we don't want that sort of a situation. But we are a very free country. You can still protest anywhere, anytime.
Minister, what are we going to do in terms of being prepared for the possibility of a deep sea horizon scenario in New Zealand?
Firstly, we've lifted practice to world best practice. As I say, literally we put companies through the ringer, through the processes I've got, through the environmental processes and so on. It is a situation where, yes, we acknowledge there are risks, but there is containment, there are prevention, and there are response strategies. Look, prevention statistically is 99.9% of the game. So what we've done in the Crown Minerals Bill is upfront made sure that these businesses, when they apply, before they can do anything, they have all of the plans, the processes, the equipment, the backup equipment on call, and we know exactly how they will run through things, and we then are in a position of saying whether they've met our stringent tests or not.
What about their liability if things do go wrong? And we can look at the RENA and say that really our law, our ability to seek redress from the companies involved was woefully inadequate.
Well, we're lifting that, and there's a consultation document going out very soon on that front. Actually, we'll make sure that they have high insurances in this area, because, look, I agree with you, that's something that we need to act on and act on quickly. But the fact of the matter is, if we go across all of the areas, yes, we want more exploration development, but to go with that, we are significantly lifting the standards and the processes which these businesses must go through.
So we wouldn't get another Pike River where a company would appear to fail awfully and kill workers and then just fold and walk away from its liability.
Well, if you look at Pike River, the fact of the matter there is everything that probably could go wrong did go wrong. Systemically, there was failure. Now, as a result of that, we had a Royal Commission. As a result of that, 16 hard-hitting recommendations, the government is implementing all of those. Now, in a sense, we're doing that for the Pike River families, but of course we're also doing that because we see a good future for underground coal mining. It is an industry into the future. Now, if you say that, and you have to, I think, with that, have best practice, and through those Royal Commission recommendations, we're making sure that we do in New Zealand.
Do any of those recommendations mean that should a company get into a situation like that in future, it won't be able to go into liquidation and walk away from its responsibilities?
No, I mean, the matter that you raise, I think, is incredibly complex. We have limited liability of companies for a whole range of reasons. But what is true, with health and safety reform that I'm leading, we are significantly increasing the criminal penalties on companies where things do go wrong, and they should be held responsible. So we're going from 2 years to 5 years imprisonment. We're going from, I think it's $600,000 to $3 million liability that individual directors should face. So, I think we are toughening our response on that, and with that, I think the deterrent effect that directors around boardroom tables will feel.
Minister, let's look at the Greenpeace campaign launched this week. I think Get Free campaign is what we can call it. Your reaction to that?
Well, look, it's a free world, as I've said. Actually, the irony of all this is they can protest anywhere, anytime. They can do this. But, to the Sam Neals and the Lucy Lawlesses, who, and I don't begrudge them this at all, are very wealthy people who travel around the world constantly making movies. There's a couple of things. Firstly, actually they do all that, the travelling on the planes, the making of movies, in terms of the raw materials, minerals and petroleum. They couldn't do it otherwise. Secondly, I'd say to them, look, actually, I don't begrudge you all the wealth and success you have.
Minister, are you calling Sam Neal a hypocrite?
That's one word for it. But I don't begrudge them what they have. But actually, when you've got the most productive, profitable sector in New Zealand, and we can grow it and give other New Zealanders actually just a taste of some of the success and the finances you've got, why wouldn't we do that?
Minister, thank you for that. I want to just address Pike River very quickly. The decision has been made to spend up to $7.2 million trying to get back into the mine. Do you really think that is money well spent? And wouldn't it perhaps be better spent as compensation to the families who haven't been paid because of the liquidation of Pike River mining?
Well, I suppose firstly, in response to that very last bit, the families want that. That is one reason to do this. I think the other reason is we as a government, and it's important we keep our pledges, have always said if there was a safe, technically feasible, financially credible way of getting into the mine and doing what we're doing, we would do it. I think thirdly, we get a lot of knowledge from this that maybe have helped the police, actually to Solid Energy and to the government. So there are reasons to do this. But let me also say, look, of course, I as Minister, and certainly the Cabinet, would expect me to treat the taxpayers' money preciously. And so we think these things through. They are difficult decisions. I think getting past, I've said before and I'll say again, this is not a yes or a no, but getting past the rockfall into the main mine proper is a much different proposition. Firstly, as a layperson, it seems at this stage very unsafe.
Minister, the Herald
and then there
had
is
an
the
editorial
financial
this week.
aspect also.
The Herald had an editorial this week. Lots of people lose loved ones in tragic circumstances, including at work, and we think of fishermen at sea, but they don't have a right to impose on the government the recovery of the bodies or ask the taxpayer to pay for it.
Oh, well, I think that's a view that's, somewhat reasonable that others will have. But I think we've made the right decision here. Then, of course, providing we can have a successful plan to get into the tunnel to the rockfall or close to the rockfall, we will have another decision to make. Primarily, it will be based, I think, on safety, but there are also these financial issues as well, which are very real.
Minister, I thank you for your time this morning. That is Simon Bridges, the Minister of Energy and Resources.